And Professor Kusner, who was a very devout Muslim, was also a very shrewd pedagogical tactician and symbol deployer and analyst. And we had a wonderful experience looking at the world in three different modes as he had it. And I have found it to be compelling in many ways. He saw the modern West to be androcentric, human-centered, and humanistic and secular. And so we would look at certain things in that manner. And he saw traditional religion, whether Christianity or Islam or Judaism, particularly those three, as being theocentric. Now, he realized there are many androcentric Christians and Jews, fewer Muslims perhaps. But then he looked at Java and he said, it's not androcentric, it's not theocentric, it's cosmocentric. And then he began to introduce the discourse of Indian symbols and religion. Indonesia, after all, is what we're talking about, and the Sanskritic tradition and the Buddhist tradition there, as well as indigenous cosmocentric traditions, and said that this is the way that Javanese really think about the world, as they're part of a great world. There's not a binary or a dualistic reality so much as there is a shared, and I don't know what the word would be, a wisdom reality that all is integrated together, and that there is not this radical dualism. Thus, we're a small part of the whole. Now, this was not comforting to some of the people in the class. In fact, it was quite alienating. But by the end of this semester, they saw the value because they were able to look at things in a new way and to begin to appreciate that difference that one finds in Southeast Asia. And then to ask themselves, how now may I begin to comprehend and appreciate the fact that almost 90% of Indonesians are devout Muslims. Well, they're not all devout Muslims, but they're Muslims in some sense. But a large percentage are quite global in their Islamic identity, yet they're also Javanese or Sumatran or whatever the local culture might be. And that then becomes a challenge for all of us, including myself, to try to understand. So that's one area, the comparative study of Muslim societies. Another is very recent, and that's looking at Islam and human rights. I did a trip around the world last winter as part of a sabbatical where I was able to interview people in the Middle East and in Europe and in Southeast Asia, as well as in the United States on this. And there's a real disconnect between Western universalistic values of human rights, as expressed perhaps most completely in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1998, the UN document, and the ideas of human rights in Muslim countries. My first teacher at the advanced level in Islamic studies once said in class, in Islam, people do not have rights, they only have duties. Now, he went on to explain that there are privileges, and there are certain conditional rights that people have, but they're not rights in the post-Lockean sense of inalienable rights. Now, rights can be violated and people can be deprived of them in the Western context of discourse, but they still have those rights. Nobody can take away those rights. They may die for them, but they have them. Whereas in Islam, there's been a tendency toward looking at duties and privileges. And a privilege and a right are not the same thing. And so I'm interested in searching the possibility of what I call mediating discourses. Because I think that they are possible, and I think that they are going to be varied and slow in coming. But the fact that so many Muslims are engaged in thinking about human rights suggests to me that there is a deeply felt need to be at the table, not only for their own personal purposes, but for people's and for global relations and civility and security.